Welcome to the Feminine Principle podcast, supporting women to let go of the ghosts from their past by exploring the hidden side of their female psyche with shamanic shadow work for women, with your host, Nicola Lucy. In this episode of the Feminine Principle podcast, I'm exploring the Madwoman Archetype, or otherwise known as the Madwoman in the Attic. And so I'm just going to read to you a few words, and I invite you to simply close your eyes while listening to these words and just experience how they make you feel. Hysterical, emotional, neurotic, demented, cut out of your mind, mad, delirious, unhinged, crazy, manic, disturbed, unbalanced, deranged, paranoid, out of control, psychotic, lunatic, possessed. These are all words to describe women experiencing emotional imbalance. And yet, as women, we are emotional. It is part of our innate nature. We have periods, and we are able to hold and give birth. And so within us, we know, we experience the cycles of life and death continuously, right from the maiden right through to the crone. And so every month when we have our period, our body knows what to do. It knows that it needs to release an unfertilized egg, an egg that will no longer give life. And so we go through this death process every single month. And so if we're going through a death process on a physical plane, then obviously we're also going through a death process on an emotional plane. And yet, throughout the centuries, we've been conditioned to deny, ignore, and suppress our innate nature. We've been conditioned to deny our emotional self. And so if we just look back through the generations, we can see how women have never been understood. The emotional aspect of woman has never been understood, because we've been governed by a patriarchal culture. We've been confined and controlled by men who are not able to understand our innate nature because their innate nature is very different. And so, therefore, we have been scared of our innate nature. We've been conditioned to fear our innate nature. And obviously, we fear what we don't understand. And so women over the centuries, we've been categorised and labelled, and therefore we've been controlled and we've been suppressed. Our innate nature has been controlled and suppressed. And as a result, when we have become emotional, when we have been going through these emotional imbalances within the self, we've been ostracised, cast out, confined, locked up, simply because we were not understood. And as we've seen, is that our periods, childbirth even, our emotions have all been dirty business. They've been shameful. It's something that is not acceptable within society. It's something which cannot be seen, that needs to be hidden, because it is shameful. And so all of these physical, psychological, emotional challenges that affect our natural state, we see it in these imbalances of women. Pre- and postnatal depression, for example, premenstrual tension, hormonal imbalances, fertility issues, death and grief. These are all aspects of the hidden feminine which have come out of balance and therefore manifest in physical, psychological, and emotional symptoms. And when they manifest, they make us walk the very thin line between sanity and insanity. And these patterns are still very dominant in today's society. And that thin line between sanity and insanity is so scary. It's a place where we've all kind of met within the self at some point in our life. And it's also that thin line that we're very afraid of. And because we are able to reach that thin line between sanity and insanity, we do all that we can to ignore it, to suppress it, to run from it, to hide from it. And we can see how this pattern has been created over and over again within women, within society, within culture. Because to be on that very thin line between sanity and insanity is scary. We don't know how to handle it. We've never been taught how to handle it. And therefore, it's no wonder that we do run away from it, because it's not deemed acceptable. We can't even acknowledge it within the self because society doesn't acknowledge it within the self. And so because we do try to ignore it and suppress it and run from it and hide from it, it doesn't go away. We try as hard as we can to make it go away, but it just gets bigger, it gets worse, and it gets scarier. And this is when the madwoman in the attic, the madwoman archetype, is very dominant in our psyche, is very dominant in our female psyche. And so she does drive us to the edge of our sanity, and she makes us act in ways we wouldn't normally act. She makes us behave in ways that we wouldn't normally behave. She becomes destructive, sabotaging the relationships that we have with others and sabotaging the relationship that we have with the self, and always sabotaging our potential to live in a healthy and balanced way. And so we are afraid of her. You know, we don't want to be destructive. We don't want to be defined as that mad woman in the attic. So we do suppress her. And the more that we suppress her, the more that she runs riot. She creates havoc in our relationships. She destroys what we love. She sabotages our relationships, and she sabotages our creative fire. And not only in our personal relationships, but also in our professional relationships. And we don't want her to be seen, you know, so we can experience this because we don't want to see that craziness, that mad woman to come out, because if she is seen by others, we will be labeled, we'll be drugged, we'll be locked away. We won't even get the promotion or the clients or the job that we want. We won't be respected. And it's that respect that we strive for from others. We want to be seen in a good light, in a holy light, in a sacred light. And so as we know, the more that we suppress these innate archetypes within the self, the more that they run riot, the more that they are dominant in our psyche. And so the more that we suppress this dominant aspect of our female psyche, it's that mad woman within us who is actually crying, screaming even for our attention. She's screaming for our love and our support. And she manifests in the physical, emotional, and psychological symptoms over and over again in these destructive patterns, because our environment, our relationship with others, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with society and culture is triggering this mad woman to react and behave and believe in this certain way. She just needs to be heard. She needs to be seen. She needs to be loved. She needs to be cared for. And so, with all archetypes, when we have the courage to go in and face this imbalance that has created this archetype within the self, we learn so much more about the self. In meeting the Madwoman archetype within our psyche, we learn who she is. We make friends with her. We listen to her stories. We listen to her needs, and we listen to her wounds and her traumas that have still not been resolved. And in doing so, we learn to be in relationship with the Madwoman archetype. By listening to her, we are able to then take action, to take the necessary steps by listening and honoring her needs so that we can bring them back into balance. What we don't realize is that The Madwoman archetype has got so much power. She has this destructive, self-sabotaging energy about her, but that creates chaos, and there is power in chaos. What she's doing is she's showing us where our limitations lie, where we are not listening or respecting our boundaries, where we are not living in alignment with our true nature. And so that power, that destructive power, when we learn how to tap into it and we learn the lessons and the wisdom it has come to teach us, we experience something so much more profound within it. It's like a nucleus, it's like the egg, it's like that seed, which is our creative force, it's our creative energy. And we need that creative energy to live in a healthy and balanced way. And so while the creativity is creating chaos, if it can create chaos, it can also create calm. And as women, this is something that we forget. If we're able to manifest such deep imbalance, then we're also able to manifest balance on the other side. And this is powerful. It's a very powerful lesson for women to learn, to understand. So rather than being afraid of this destructive Madwoman archetype, we can tap into her gifts, into her wisdom, to help us restore our inner foundation and personal power. She can help us to restore our connection to our creativity and all that wishes to be birthed from us, whether that's in physical form or art form, whatever it is, it's our potential. And so therefore, connecting with her, meeting her, knowing her, is one of the greatest gifts that we can really give to ourselves as women. And because we've been conditioned that that thin line of sanity and insanity is not a good place to be, when we learn how to tap into that place, that very thin space between sanity and insanity, we get to experience ourselves in a whole new way. And that can be very, very frightening. And so, we can see it in things like depression and premenstrual tension and things like that, where we are driven to the edge. But when we are able to tap into that edge, not from a place of reaction, but from a place of response, it's where our internal structure opens, helps us to go beyond that limitation and tap into something that's been so hidden and so buried within ourselves. And that is where our true magic lies. It's where our true power lies, is being able to tap into that very thin line, to not go over the edge, but experience what is beyond the edge of that limitation that was created within us. And so, ladies, how does the Madwoman archetype show up in your life? In which relationships is she most dominant? What has she come to teach you about what is out of balance within you? Where does she want to take you? What stories does she want you to hear? What healing can she bring you to experience the other side of your potential beyond this Madwoman archetype?
Are you ready to break free from the ghosts of your past, to live with more freedom and a clear sense of purpose and inner confidence? If so, book a chat with me to explore the potent magic of one-to-one shadow walking sessions at thefeminineprinciple.com.